mystery illness, the media said many things. They said, "This is how it all started," and then offered theories of train wrecks and toxic spills, black mold in the classrooms, witchcraft in the woods. They said, "There is no end in sight," and talked about the diagnosis, conversion disorder, and mass psychogenic illness, but always with a disbelieving tone, their faces floating on the television screen, disembodied heads in small side-by-side boxes. On other shows, the girls sat on sofas beside their mothers, answering questions and twitching more violently the more they spoke. "I know my daughter," Thera's mother said. "She's a normal, happy girl. There must be something physically wrong with her." The mothers insisted, and the girls all agreed. A refrain emerged. They wanted the world to know they weren't crazy. "Before this," Thera stuttered, arms flailing as she started to speak, "I was fine." As she convulsed, the other girls began to as well, their movements picking up until the couch was rocked by the violence of their bodies. We weren't afraid of them, though the nation was. In the years approaching my mother's death, she and I were fixated on these girls. We talked about every unfolding aspect of their story, hours on the phone about their lives, about our lives, about how our histories were entwined, about how we were implicated, how this mystery illness was part of a system of symbolism, one older than us, older than Jell-O, consumerism, and America itself, one older even than witchcraft, one as old as men and women and words. This illness and its attendant metaphors, my mother told me, were what she'd been trying to write about all these years. This, she said, was why she'd started her memoir in the first place. She pronounced memoir with a soft R, memoir, and talked about hers constantly. In fact, the book, almost as old as I was, sometimes seemed to me like my mother's second child, and I resented her flourished memoir for all the years she spent writing it, all the years she spent away from me. But until I got older, I never thought of her book the way she did, as a spell she wrote to stop her family curse and save herself. Her writing would reclaim her life story, she believed, and the story of her mother before her. Her writing would become a counter-curse. We come from Jell-O. It is our birthright, bought by my mother's great-great-uncle by marriage for $450 in 1899 and sold 26 years later for $67 million. Jell-O money paid my mother's health insurance. It many times bought my ticket to her bedside in the cancer ward at Mount Sinai, where in the winter of 2015 we watched the girls of Leroy, searching for glimpses of ourselves. Even so, my mother rarely ate the stuff. She saw Jell-O as an effigy of a curse she longed to escape. An apron, a kitchen, and long hours spent molding the perfect dessert had always seemed a cage to her, and she dreamed of freedom, art and travel, music and self-expression, a life sung loudly and lived without fear. But, sick as she was that winter, Jell-O was all she could keep down. "Who would have thought?" she whispered one night as I was feeding her. I pretended not to hear. It hurt too much to acknowledge every incremental loss she bore on the road to losing her life. I learned to be choosy with my empathy. She smacked her lips in mock satisfaction then, and listed the food she'd eat if she could. Cold slices of pineapple, fried egg sandwiches, a burger so rare it dripped bloody juices. "You'll get there," I said, coaxing her to take one more bite. Afterward, she slept, her little mouth open, sighs arriving like characters in her dreams, expressions of comfort maybe of pain. Her red curls, touched with gray where the dye had worn off, haloed her face. Her hands were open at her sides, waiting for my palm, which molded perfectly to the soft shell of hers. I sat, our fingers interlaced, looking out the window, keeping watch, waiting for her eyes to open, waiting to hear her voice. From her room at Mount Sinai, we could see the vented smoke from